I'm Philip Chase. Welcome to my YouTube channel on the best of fantasy. Today I am doing my very first book tag video. That's right, I was tagged, which is a great honor for me actually, and it is in fact the accepted test tag, which is, as you could probably tell by the title, a Wheel of Time book tag. And it was created by none other than Ridhima. And if you haven't seen her channel before, check it out. It's a wonderful channel. She has some great Wheel of Time content as well as some other great book content. I will put a link to her channel in the description below, as well as a link to her original questions for the accepted test tag. So this also gives me, in addition to me being incredibly honored by being tagged among many great Wheel of Time creators out there. I'm not a Wheel of Time specialist myself. I'm more of a generalist in fantasy, but I am definitely a fan of Wheel of Time. I do have one video that is a review of the series as a whole. I'll put a link to that as well in the description below. And you can tell from that video that I'm definitely a big-time fan of Wheel of Time. I consider it one of the greatest achievements in fantasy, in fact. And this tag also gives me an opportunity to mention that eventually I will have more Wheel of Time content in my channel. I intend to do a Wheel of Time reread eventually, book by book, probably one book a month. I'll be doing a review of each book and eventually doing another review of the series as a whole. So that's probably going to be in a little over a year. That's kind of long-term planning for sure. So as I mentioned, this is my very first book tag. In fact, when I started this channel, I really was probably the most ignorant booktuber in the world. I didn't know what a book tag was. I saw these book tag videos and thought, where are these mysterious book tags coming from? So this is kind of fun for me to have my very first one. And as I said, I'm very deeply honored to be doing it. So without further ado, let's get into the questions. Number 1. How did you first hear about the Wheel of Time? And what made you want to read the series? So, with my usual style, I was somewhat late to the party. I began reading the Wheel of Time probably, well actually it was definitely after Robert Jordan's passing. I think that was in 2007 or so. But I definitely started picking up the series before Brandon Sanderson finished it. So sometime in between 2007 and the end of the series. And I do remember having to wait for the last few books. But I actually began reading the series after I read the prequel story that Robert Jordan wrote for this book right here, Legends. It's an anthology of fantasy short stories / novellas edited by Robert Silverberg. And the last selection in there is actually New Spring. So that's the prequel. I think he actually expanded New Spring into a longer novel, but initially it was published in this book right here, Legends. So I actually read that first. That was my introduction, I think appropriately, to the series, although I believe that came long after the first book, which was I think 1990 or so. So yeah, that was my introduction to the series. So here we go with number 2. If you had a chance to join an Ajah in the White Tower, which one would you join? And then there's a follow-up to that based on which one you pick. Answer the corresponding question. So in all honesty, I probably, being a rather bookish person, would be in the brown Ajah. Although since this is fantasy, I can pretend that maybe I'd be in the blue Ajah, you know, questing for justice and that sort of thing. So I'll just go with the blue Ajah, and so that means my follow-up question is a plot twist that I didn't see coming. Well, let me think. I think the biggest one for me would have been in the last book. I'm not going to say the name of the character because I don't want to make this too spoilery here, but I was surprised by the death of a certain major character that occurred in the last book. Not going to say who. Obviously, I did expect some deaths to happen at the climax of the series, but this particular one took me by surprise, I have to say. And if you've read the books, you almost certainly know who I mean. Number 3. If the Black Tower had Ajahs, what might some of them be? Well, I'm going to be completely honest with you here. For some reason, and this is probably the stupidest thing ever, but the first thing I thought of when I thought of the Black Tower having Ajahs and trying to figure out what kind of Ajahs could we have here. I don't know why I thought of this, maybe because they're all dudes there and I was thinking of a fraternity or something, but I thought of like alcoholic beverages. So you'd have like the beer Ajah and the wine Ajah for the slightly more refined fellows, or the whiskey Ajah. That would be mine, I think. I like that. But not that I'm a big drinker or anything. I don't know why I thought of this. Of course, not everybody drinks alcohol, so I don't know. Maybe you'd have to have the milk Ajah. And honestly, the more I thought of this, the stupider it sounded. So I'm going to go with something else, actually. I think you should name the Ajahs for the Black Tower after cool animals. Not the most original thought either, but hey, you know, like the lion Ajah or the wolf Ajah or the bear Ajah. I think you'd have to have something cute in there too, like I don't know, the armadillo Ajah or the penguin Ajah maybe. For the, you know, everybody needs a little like Hufflepuff sort of place. So yeah, that should be there, maybe. I don't know. That was the best I could come up with for that one. All right, so number 4, who is a character you love but would hate to meet in real life? All right, so for this one, I'm going to go for Ishmael or Moradin. And I just think he's a cool character and well done. And I guess in that sense, I like him. I think he's a very well done character, a good villain. And I think he's an interesting villain because he's more philosophical than your typical baddie. And he also doesn't want power so much as just annihilation. And I think that's very interesting. I also thought that the sort of bond that was occurring between him and Rand made him a much more fascinating part of the story. So yeah, he'd be my pick for character. Now, obviously, I wouldn't want to meet him. That should be obvious enough why. He doesn't seem like the sort of person you'd really want to meet. He probably would give me the creeps, I'm sure, right from the get-go. All right, now number 5. Who is a character from another book that would make a good warder? Okay, I thought about this one for probably longer than I should have, and I came up with a list. But at the end of the day, I decided to go for something a little more, I don't know, fun and interesting. I went with Logan Nine Fingers from the First Law trilogy by Joe Abercrombie, which is a big favorite of mine. But I also went with Logan because I wanted somebody who was tough, obviously, but somebody who's loyal. And that's definitely Logan. He's a great fella. Although I'd want to be careful if he went into one of his berserker rages. But yeah, I just thought he'd be an interesting one. Nice guy to, if you're going to spend that much time with somebody too, it should be somebody you would enjoy chatting with, I think. So yeah, Logan for me would be the choice. All right, so number 6. What's a scene from the books you're most excited to see on screen? I actually mentioned this scene in my review of the Wheel of Time series as one of my favorite sort of iconic scenes. So that was the one that leapt to mind for me. It's from The Gathering Storm. I don't want to say too much about it, but it's Rand at the top of the Dragon Mount. And for me, that is one of the most cathartic moments in the whole series. And it just, I don't know, it really stuck with me. So that's a scene I definitely, if it's well done, it could be really brilliant. So I would love to see that one on screen. Number 7, what are your favorite and least favorite book covers? Okay, so my most favorite is a fairly easy answer, and that is A Memory of Light, the last book in the series. I think that's probably, in terms of the artwork, the best cover in the series. Now, I'm going to say something maybe, I don't know, a little controversial here about the covers in general, and that is that, well, I recognize that there's probably a lot of nostalgic value for these covers for a lot of people. I do think that there's a lot of kind of 80s cheese flavor that sort of carried over into the 90s with these book covers. Honestly, I think most of them are pretty awful. So I could have a few candidates for worst cover, to be honest with you. But I'm going to go with The Eye of the World, which is maybe the most iconic cover in the whole series. I'm going to go with The Eye of the World because of the proportions on there just look so wrong to me. Moraine looks, she's in the foreground, but she's somehow tiny. She looks like a 5-year-old on one of those mini horses, maybe, with Lan looming over her, behind her. And honestly, that doesn't look anything like the Lan that I picture. That's a kind of weird-looking helmet. I don't know. But yeah, for me, I guess that one just didn't match what I thought of when I read the book at all. And yeah, this got that 80s cheese factor for sure. All right, so number 8. What's a location in the Wheel of Time you'd like to visit? I'm going to pick Emmons Field, although before everything went down, as a nice, quiet, idyllic place with, a nice sense of history there, of course, a lot of great history. But in the present of Emmons Field, before the whole story takes place, it seems like such a nice, kind of Shire-like place. Maybe a place I'd scope out for retirement, a place where I could sit down and read and do some writing and enjoy life in the quiet village, that sort of thing, the idyllic pastoral life. Looks good to me. I guess that's where I am in my life right now. I'm kind of keeping an eye out for that sort of thing. So Emmons Field. Number 9, if you could make your own ter'angreal, what would it look like and what would it do? Well, the first thing that leapt to mind is that I'd make a ring, kind of like this one here. And it would be a ter'angreal that would allow me to teleport. I don't know, is that legit? I've always wanted to teleport. So ever since I was a kid reading comic books, one of my favorites was the X-Men with Nightcrawler. And I'd love to have an ability to teleport. So that's probably what I would go for. And number 10, what's another book or a series you think Wheel of Time fans might like? Well, I'm afraid I'm going to go with a fairly obvious answer here, and that is Brandon Sanderson's Stormlight Archive. And I thought about it, and it just seems like a good match in terms of the tone and the scope and the role of the magical system being an important part of the plot. So yeah, I'm going to go with that. Of course, Sanderson finished the Wheel of Time series as well, so that's a nice connection. So yeah, I would highly recommend it, actually, for any fan of Wheel of Time. If you haven't read the Stormlight Archive, dive in, because I think you probably would love it. And for number 11, tag some Wheel of Time content creators and or fans to do the tag. Okay, so I decided to just tag one creator, and that is Alex Nieves, and he's got a wonderful channel. You should check it out. I'll have a link to it in the description below. And he has read some Wheel of Time. I think he is at least 5 books into the series, and I believe he will be continuing with that, so it would be fun to see what he makes of this book tag. So Alex, here you go. I'm looking forward to seeing your take on this. And that wraps up the accepted test for yours truly. So I will be returning next week with a review of Fall of Light, which I am currently in the midst of. It is a tremendous book with, oh my goodness, just a lot of philosophy in there, and so it's not the quickest read. It's a big book, and besides being big, it's dense, and I mean that in the most positive way possible. I love Steven Erikson. His writing is fantastic in my opinion, some of the deepest stuff you can read in fantasy. So I'm really looking forward to reviewing that second installment of the Carcanis trilogy, and so I hope you'll join me for that. I look forward to seeing you again. Till next time.